At the beginning of the movie, a bad guy named Radic meets a German reporter named Greta secretly to talk about some classified CIA files. The files and photos are shown to Greta by Radic. She seems excited to be able to tell everyone about the CIA cover-up. Radic pulls out his gun while she takes pictures with her phone. Greta asks Radic why he would betray her, but he shoots her. There are protests all over the city when false information spreads that the CIA is killing reporters. This is the third murder of this kind in Greece in a month. CIA worker Kate, on the other hand, is looking into why the people were killed. Late that night, Kate is still watching a videotape by herself in the office when she sees someone who turns out to be Radic. She quickly runs over to her boss, Tim, who is also shocked to see Radic, who had been dead for more than 18 months. Tim checks to see if Kate has shown anyone else, before telling Handler that Radic was a secret CIA agent who was working with both the Greek and Russian mafias. There was a famous CIA agent called Steve at that time. He was now retired and working as a Spartan bricklayer. Steve goes to work on a building site and then to the roof to fix an old wall. He goes to get lunch and runs into Kate and Tim. He doesn't like seeing them. He hears about the CIA being blackmailed and the bodies that have been found that blame Radic for the murder. Steve doesn't believe this because he knows Radic is dangerous, but not so dangerous that he would kill other people. He also saw Radic die. A Russian smuggler that Tim tells Steve about a hit Radic did on a Russian smuggler that the CIA approved. Also, Radic's picture was found at Greta's crime scene, proving that it is him. Tim is scared about everything happening and wants Steve and Kate to go to Greece to stop him. Kate and Steve both think Kate should be off the task. Tim is adamant because they are the only ones who know about Radic. Steve should go on the task, says Tim, unless he wants Radic to go after him next. But Steve tells him to clean up his mess and won't do it. He returns to the roof to finish his work and thinks about how close he was to Radic's family. At that moment, Steve is shot, and he quickly hides as more shots are fired. He puts a bandage on his wound and then rappels down to another rooftop, where two shooters appear. But Steve sneaks up on them and takes one. He slams into the other shooter and takes away his gun. The two of them start fighting, and one of them grabs a steel bar. The man tries to stab Steve again, but Steve blocks his blows and throws him. Steve beats the man up, though, and then ties his throat shut with his tape measure. Steve also ties up the man and gets out of the lift just before it falls to the ground. Steve then agrees to go on the task, and he and Kate meet up to get on their flight. Kate should not get in his way, he says. She wants to talk about everything, but Steve puts on his headphones and sleeps. In the evening, Kate looks over the plan again and sees pictures of Rick's brutally killed pregnant wife and daughter. Soon after, they land in Greece and go to a CIA black site to get a car. When they get to the building, he runs into an old friend named Patricio, who used to work with Steve. Kate doesn't like that the plan was changed for her. Steve, though, tells her that they called him Steve. They are given weapons by Patricio, who gives them new identities. Kate is meant to be Steve's wife. They leave and get to Greece the next day, checking into a fancy hotel room. Steve tells Kate to shower, but Steve isn't in the room when she returns. Steve goes to a church, lights some candles, and then puts something inside the church that can listen in. Then Steve sneaks into a fancy party and meets up with Ty, an old CIA coworker. Until she finds out that Tim sent him, she tells him that the agency is still looking for him. He asks about a friend from their college days, Radic, and discovers that the person is now running a club. Steve goes straight there, where he meets their own Steph and immediately asks where Radic is. Steve knows Radic is still alive even though Steph tells him Radic is dead. Steve even thinks Radic is running the club. Steph is sure that Radic is dead and tells Steve he will no longer be bullied. He then shows Steve his men, who are waiting. Steph tells Steve to sit and drink, but Steve hits guard with the glass. Steve swoops down on the guys and goes through them without getting hit. He then starts shooting to make a scene. Steph's men are shooting at him as he runs away, but Kate suddenly appears and saves him. Steve tells her he found Kate's bug after she yells at him for leaving her behind. During the chaos, he puts it on Steph to help him find Radic. Kate won't go any further until Steve tells her what happened with Radic. Steve finally agrees that the fact that his family was killed in Radic's last hit made him lose it, and he began to blame the CIA. He started a plan to get back at them, and Steve was told to kill him. Right then, the CIA gets a video message from a radio station demanding $100 million, or the person inside will give out information about the CIA. Steve and Kate find Steph and go to his house. After he goes, they break in to see if they can find any clues that lead them to Radic. Kate looks through his files and notebook. At the same time, Steve finds some sloppy brickwork on a column and uses his tools to uncover a secret space. There, they find Greta's cell phone and clues about who Radic will go after next. They hear the doors open and quickly hide before a guard comes in. When the man hears a sneeze, he pulls out his gun, but Steve strikes him from behind. Now, the man starts hard throwing them both around the room. Then he pulls out a knife and tells Steve to arm himself. They start cutting each other until they get into another fight. The man is too strong, though, and throws Steve. He takes off his belt and starts to choke Steve. Steve grabs his trowel and stabs the man in the neck, killing him. The two took care of their wounds after Kate woke up. They thought about how she didn't do anything when she had the chance to kill the man. Steve tells her to enjoy these times because she won't feel anything soon. Steve then gets a text message from Patricio telling him where the next target is. When they get to the small town, they wait outside a coffee shop to see the target, who is drinking coffee. Patricio is also nearby, sitting down. Steve wants to use the man as bait, but Kate thinks they should warn him. Radic calls Steve at that very moment. Then it comes out that Steve couldn't bring himself to kill Radic, so he let him go with him and agreed never to come back. Radic tells him that someone leaked his secret to the Russians, which killed his family. He thinks it's the CIA. Steve looks through the crowd and sees a well-dressed guy. He starts to follow him. Steve tries to talk him out of his grudge, but Radic tells him to stay away. Steve meets up with the man, but it's not on the phone. Radic suddenly shows up and kills the reporter with a gun before getting on a bike. Steve shoots his tires, which makes him crash, but he gets away. They plan to use the tablet that Patricio gets from the bike. Radic also left behind a picture of the Cuban minister, Luis Delgado. Kate thinks they should make a call. Steve stops her now because he thinks Tim is sending only Kate and himself to hide his ass. He tells her not to trust anyone at the CIA, which means he might be a radical spy. As Tim calls, Kate doesn't want to believe she can't trust the CIA. Even so, Steve goes to see Ty, and there is a lot of tension between them because they have a past. She tells him that Costas has stopped all CIA work in Greece and will soon hold a press meeting to discuss what he found. Steve told her that he saw Radic and thinks the CIA used him against them. Radic was the one who didn't keep his end of the deal, Ty says, to make the agency look good. Steve remembers waiting for her to leave with him a few years ago, but Ty turned him down and chose her work instead. This makes her feel bad. She instead says sorry, and the two of them share a moment. Steve can remember the time when Radic refused to carry out a CIA-ordered hit on a politician. Even though Steve told him not to break the rules, he promised to help him and his family. When he wakes up later on Ty's couch, she tells him that they were able to find the video's IP address. Ty can't send a team to the spot, but Steve has already made plans to go and stop his old friend from killing himself. He returns to the hotel room, where Kate has been thinking about what to do. She tells Steve that she knows he talked to Radic on the phone, and then, out of the blue, she points a gun at him and says he works for Radic. Steve quickly takes the gun away from her, but he gives it back to her with a smile. Afterward, he tells her he talks with Radic but not about what she thinks. They are trying to figure out where the video came from and decide to check out the building that looks like it has been empty for a while. Steve is shocked to see that Patricio is dead and hanging from the roof. He had been beaten up. After an angry look at his friend, Steve, a large group of armed men walk in. Steve kills the first man, which starts a fierce shootout. Kate gets a bag of explosives and hides under the floor to get away. At the same time, Steve sets off a huge explosion that kills a few guys before he expertly shoots the rest. He fights his way through the men and is looking for Kate when red dots start to show up on his chest. This tells the men where to find Steph. He tells Steve that she must give up or die. Steve says no, but Steve lowers his gun when Steph says that he has Kate in his hands. Kate begs Steve to stay behind, but he won't because he loves her. Steve seems to give up when all of a sudden he throws the bomb bag at Steph, killing all the guys in the explosion. As Kate cries in her car, she sees Steve walk out of the fire. Additionally, Steve is mad that Patricio is murdered by Radic, and he plans to kill him for real this time. They tell Kate that they will pay the $100 million, and Steve sees this as a chance to get on the radio. When Tim gets to Greece, Ty, Steve, and Kate are soon all in the same room. Then Tim tells Steve that Radic did ask Kate to drop off the money, and that he wants Steve to leave the job. They get Kate ready by giving her a flash drive with 100 million bitcoins. Steve then leaves the room. After the drop, they plan to get the radio. Kate then gets to a place where she finds a phone tucked under a phone box. Then she follows the directions to a bar. As she walks into the back room, someone grabs her. On the other hand, Steve says he has been following her. He takes the drive, sends Kate off, and then draws his gun and goes down. Steve sees a laptop on a desk in the basement, which is otherwise empty. Radic shows up on a video call as he connects the flash drive. He doesn't believe the CIA. Steve tells him that he killed Patricio without a good reason. He will find Radic no matter where he hides. Radic tells him that he is not running because he already hit Costas. Steve tells him that the hit could start a war, but Radic wants it to happen because he can't take it any longer. As soon as the door to the basement shuts, Steve is squished under the desk. As soon as he sees the bomb, he quickly moves the table against a wall and hides. Steve is scared before a huge blast tears a hole in the wall, but he makes it through. He goes outside, but he falls into the trash. Radic can hit him with a car and kill him, but Kate pulls up in the AMG, and Steve takes the wheel. They catch Radic quickly. Kate tries to blow the tires up, but she can't. Steve goes off-road, crashes into a wall, and then flips Radic's van over. They almost lose him before he gets away. Steve runs to the car, but Radic is already gone. He screams his name again further on. There is a party meeting in town, and Costas is giving a speech. Steve looks in every building for Radic until he finds him. Steve grabs a hatchet from one of the cameramen on a tower while RC lines up his shot. Steve is able to knock down the tower, which makes Radic miss and fall. Steve breaks Steve's hand before he can get his gun. Steve points the gun at him and tells him it's over. He says sorry for not keeping Radic's family safe and shoots him as he goes for his jacket. He was looking for a picture of Steve and his family, it turns out. The police then shoot Steve in the chest, knocking him out. When he wakes up in the hospital, Kate is sitting next to him. She says they found Radic's laptop, but the money wasn't there. It turns out that they don't care about the 100 million because the CIA's secrets have been kept secret. The CIA saved Costas's life, and he now thanks them. Tim thinks that they are now equal, which makes Kate think that Tim has the money. After a few nights, Ty is getting ready to leave town when Steve surprises her in her flat and scares her. Getting him a drink makes her nervous, and then she tells Steve to follow her. But Steve feels like something is wrong. He hears vans pulling up outside, and Ty is holding him with a gun. She says Radic asked her to be his spy and that she had no choice but to work with him. Ty gets her bags and goes. On her way, she walks past a group of men who are going to kill Steve. Steve goes inside, grabs a white package, puts it in the oven, and then sneaks out a window. When the guys walk in, one of them hears the oven and opens it, setting off a huge explosion. Steve was getting out when he was thrown into the street right in front of Ty, who was just driving off. Ty starts to speed at him, but Kate fires at her, hitting her and sending her flying. Steve looks deeply at her dead body before Kate comes to get him. The two of them then leave for the CIA offices. Kate thought Tim was dirty. That shocks Tim, and he tells her to pack her things. She thinks she's going to be fired, but he gives her more work and tells her to handle her own cases. Kate tells her no, packs her things, and leaves. After that, we see Steve back at work, happy to be putting bricks. Don't forget to join and turn on alerts to watch more films like this. Thank you for watching.